The wind on New Canaanix could peel paint and bad ideas. It came off the hematite flats like a belt sander, hissing over scrub, rattling the sun-bleached bones of fence posts, chewing the horizon down to a thin red line. Ezekiel Harridan Zeke to anyone brave enough to try like the wind. It filled the spaces where people might have talked. He had the ranch system down to an algorithm. Dawn, cycle the cisterns, brush the dust off the solar panes, check the cattle 8 dozen longhorn synths with carbon-hardened hooves, and eyes like polite marbles. Midday, weld whatever had vibrated loose. Evening, record a message to no one in particular on an old war surplus pegboard that saved nothing and sent nowhere. Night, sleep when he could, under a ceiling fan that spun like a lazy propeller dreaming of takeoff. No visitors. That was the point. The ranch had a name once. Blue Mesa burned into a cedar sign hung over the gate. He took the sign down and used it to patch a coop after the first dust storm. History made a lousy talisman. It was better as lumber. If you needed a story to make a place real, Zeke figured, you didn't belong there in the first place. The people in town called him the captain. Some said it with respect, some like it tasted bad, most not at all. He didn't correct them that he wasn't a captain anymore. The stars had stripped that off him, the way the wind stripped paint off old tractors. On the morning everything tilted, he was elbow deep in a sun-buckled water pump, listening to its death rattle. The pump coughed a ribbon of steam and spit a bolt into the dust. "Talk to me," Zeke muttered, as if charm could substitute for parts. He wasn't a praying man, but he had a mechanic's faith. Nothing was beyond the persuasion of a welder and stubbornness. He'd quit the Navy because he'd run out of problems that could be fixed with his hands. The ranch gave him back that luxury. A busted pump didn't argue politics. The alarm chirped once, an inquisitive little sound the factory called a proximity courtesy. Zeke called it cricket. He'd tuned cricket down to barely audible. Loud noises could rip you out of a good quiet like a hook out of skin, but he still heard it. You never stop hearing the first sound of trouble. He straightened, squinting into the daylight. The sky was clear, no storm, no sheriff skimmer. Cricket chirped again, more insistent this time, and the fenceland's laser posts tremored in sequence. A ripple of red beads along the property's edge. An object was approaching, low, fast, flagrantly uninvited. Zeke wiped his hands on a rag and trudged to the shack built around the ranch's brain. He swung the door open, and the cool air kissed his face, smelling like dust filtered through hope. The console bloomed into life at a palm thrum, and the external cameras stitched together a panorama on the screen. There, a black fleck against the rust sky, wobbling on a broken vector, boost jets coughing. Not authority, Zeke said, mostly to cricket. Authority like their ships, like they liked their boots, polished and hard. This craft looked like a kicked can with delusions. He thumbed the rifle case open on the wall. The slug thrower inside was old, heavy, and honest. On another hook hung the other weapon, a gauntlet with an embedded grav plate the Navy had called a palm persuader, and Zeke called retirement insurance. He strapped the gauntlet on and slung the rifle over his back. Solitude is a gentleman's agreement with the world. Sometimes the world forgets it signed. The wind picked up as he stepped outside, tugging at the brim of his hat, threading red grit into his beard. The black speck swelled into a shuttle, a stubby escape craft from something bigger and meaner. Patches of plating had been replaced with mismatched panels. A strip of hull bore a char pattern like fingers dragged through ash. No spotlight, no sirens, no hail. Zeke walked to the gate and stood there with his hands hooked casual into his belt, like a rancher posing for a catalog. The shuttle limped closer and closer until the dust blew up in a rooster tail, and the skids punched into the dirt 50 yards beyond the fence. The turbines spooled down, coughing and rattling like a dying laugh. Silence rolled back in. Even the wind held its breath. The shuttle's side hatch heaved and stuck. Someone inside gave it a better idea with a crowbar. A stair clanged down. 11 figures disembarked, one after the other, like beads shaken out of a busted necklace. Zeke didn't blink. He'd seen most shapes a living thing could come in. War is a zoo that lost its locks. The first to step forward was tall and slender, wrapped in a Trevelle cloak that shed the dust as if insulted. When she pushed her hood back, Zeke's mind did a little mistake, a skip over a groove that had never been cut. Her skin was black like polished stone and underlit by a soft electric blue, as if she had a storm bottled under there. Her eyes were luminous nacre, with pupils like vertical slits that opened and closed in slow blinks. Behind her, a being with jointed limbs and filigreed antennae held a bundle like a violin case, and kept its head cocked, listening to the wind the way musicians listen to a crowd. A third short and banded, scales oiled by heat wore a harness threaded with talismans, fragments of crystal etched with prayer, fourth feathered crest flattened by travel grime, spiral talons clicking. Fifth, a narrow silhouette with a face that rearranged itself to find the right shape. Never quite human, never not. 11 in all. And no to the same. Zeke felt the old itch behind his ribs, the place the Navy had left a hook. He knew the numbers. 11 survivors from a shuttle designed for 6. That meant 3 things: desperation, loss, and a story he did not want to hear. Private property. He called, voice flat enough to skip across a pond. If you're selling something I don't drink, shoot, or sleep on, you'll want another planet. They traded glances. The tall one lifted empty hands, turning her palms out in a gesture smashed into universal by 1,000 first contacts. She stepped to the fence. The shimmer of the laser screen licked at the air between them. She stopped shy of it, as if she could feel the heat with her bones. "We are not selling," she said, and the language was good galactic standard with a clean access, taught by someone who believed in rules. "We are asking." Zeke hated the word in a way he couldn't articulate, like a taste you can't spit out. Asking meant deciding. He preferred laws or storms or broken pumps, those you dealt with until they were finished and you were finished. Asking meant it wasn't finished when you walked away. Fuel. He said, water, food, shelter. She said. The wind put its shoulder into the fence, wires humming. He could see their faces now, those that had faces like his. They looked like people who'd been awake too long in a place that wanted them asleep forever. Weapons, none obvious. But you didn't stay alive this far out without edges, hidden or otherwise. Zeke felt the palm persuader vibrate once, a cat's purr against his wrist. Hungry. The antennaed one unclasped the bundle and showed the case's interior through the fence, like a magician proving there was no rabbit. Inside, parts. A cracked fusion collar, snapped bolts, a thermal regulator with scorch marks. They were holding a ship together with souvenirs. Zeke had seen that look before, on pilots who had taken their craft past specifications and into folklore. Town's 12 clicks, he said. They have beds, a depot, an authority posting. We cannot be seen in town. The tall one's voice was almost gentle, as if she were telling him the news about the weather. We have no papers, no permissions. We have grief. Sometimes these things contradict. Plenty of folks have grief, Zeke said. He wasn't trying to be cruel. He was trying not to be something worse. She glanced back at the others. The feathered one stepped closer now, crest lifting a fraction, and made a sound a chord more than a word. The tall one translated, a rhythm and a worry stitched into language. We are from different worlds, but one ship. We were married to soldiers. They died in the same war. We are surviving on the same promise that there is somewhere not burning. Asterisk married. Died. War. The 3 words were a ghost map over Zeke's chest, charting routes he had taken too many times. He kept his face plain. The wind threw a sheet of dust sideways. It hissed through the fence like spilled sugar. The cattle watched, chewing. Cattle were honest. They didn't pretend. They weren't waiting for you to decide. I was told this place was empty. The tall one said after a beat, and her smile flickered on like a bad light. A retired human lives alone. He minds his business and prefers to be forgotten. The forgetting is important for us. For a time, your source needs better hobbies, Zeke said. I will ask one question, she said. If the answer is no, we will leave with thanks for the listening and the dust. She paused, as if measuring the shape of what came next. Are you the kind of human who locks the gate and pretends not to hear knocking? Zeke stared at the line where the fence cut the world into legal truths. He was good at being that kind of human. He had practiced for years. Lock the gate. Let the wind carry away the voices. Fix the pump. Count the cattle. Make the coffee. Sign for the delivered feed. Read no letters. Answer no calls. Live long enough that the past grows tired of waiting and goes home. The shuttle clicked as it cooled. Somewhere inside it, a compressor spun down with the high whine of a trapped insect. The smell of hot metal rode the air. Zeke tasted it and thought, drive oil on deck plating, a deckhand slipping. The call to brace memory, neat as a blade. You got names? He asked, before he knew he was going to ask it. The tall one blinked, and the blue underlight in her skin pulsed once, surprised. I am Illyra, she said, and touched her chest with 2 fingers. She gestured to the antennaed musician, Vasht, to the scaled one, Sura, the feathered, Keth. A ripple of introductions followed 11 hands of a deck Zeke did not intend to play. The names braided themselves together in his head and tugged, tugged, tugged. He didn't tell them his name. Names were credit you extended and sometimes didn't get back. Authority comes this way every week, he said. They like to count. Cattle, people, lives. We will be gone before anyone comes, Illyra said. If you let us sleep where the wind cannot find our bones. Zeke's eyes slid to the barn. It was big enough to hide a shuttle if the shuttle were exceptionally cooperative, and gravity mildly forgiving. It wasn't, but the machine bays could hold 11 bodies if those bodies were good at curling, and the feed loft had space between bales where the dust already tried to make a bed. He saw the work of it, the logistics settling over his mind like a spreadsheet, water rationing, ventilation, heat sinks for signatures, falsified patterns on the perimeter sensors so the fence would hum the same even when it wasn't. He also saw the other chain of work, turn them away. Report a stray shuttle to the authority feed, because that's what honest men in quiet places did. Boil coffee until the taste of decision diluted enough to gulp. The next morning, back to the pump, widows, Illyra said, as if the word would explain the geometry of the problem. All of us. The war took our mates. The war took our homes. We are what is left when something big has finished eating. The wind nodded to that. A dry applause across the flats. Zeke didn't believe in omens. He didn't believe in much. But the cattle had started to shuffle, restless, as if moved by some uncatalogued pressure. He remembered a convoy cut off over Kovak Rim. Remembered the civilian barge that didn't have the right transponder and therefore, to the computer, didn't exist. He remembered making a call fast enough that his mouth outran his conscience. He had learned then that silence could be an accomplice. He thumbed the fence remote clip to his belt. The lead winked at him like an old friend at a bad idea. This is not charity, he said, mostly because he had to say something tight-fisted to keep his hands steady. You'll work. You'll keep your noise down. You'll do what I tell you when I tell you. I don't run a democracy. I run a ranch. Illyra's eyes brightened a dim dawn under stone. We have done harder things for less mercy. You stay off the ridgelines, Zeke continued, the plan rising under his ribs the way an old tune rises under your fingers. Don't silhouette. Don't light heat you don't need. If authority pings the perimeter, you are vapor and shadows. If anyone asks who's living here, no one, Illyra said. And for the first time, the smile didn't flicker. A retired human, alone. Zeke's thumb hovered over the gate control. The seconds arranged on either side like dominoes daring him. He could turn back. He could be the man he had been teaching himself to be. The man the wind couldn't move. Cricket chirped a third time. A tiny insistence from the console in the shack. Perimeter skin completing. No additional contacts. The world offered him a moment clean of consequence. As if in apology for all the moments that weren't. Zeke exhaled through his nose. One night, he said, and pressed his thumb to the control. The fence line dimmed. The hum ducked. The gate's locks thudded open with the same sound as a heart giving up a grudge. The widows looked at one another. The kind of look that ships pass between themselves in a storm brief. Grateful, dangerous, don't make me regret it, Zeke said, and swung the gate wide to let the 11 shadows walk into his silence. They entered like a strange weather front 11 shapes sliding past the gate and shrinking Zeke's big empty into something small and occupied. The shuttle coughed one last metallic sigh and went quiet beside the machine bays. Dust resettled, the cattle blinked, and the ranch waited to see which way the new center of gravity would tilt. Zeke did what men do when the universe arrives unannounced. He made rules. Listen up, he said, voice pulled tight as baling wire. We got 3 no. Make it 5 non-negotiables. He held up fingers, counting them off. 1. No heat signatures after dark. Close-up shop when the sun hits the ridge. If something glows, I don't want to know it. 2. The fence is my law and your wall. You don't touch it, tune it, or teach it any languages, but mine unless I'm watching. 3. No one goes above the ridgelines or loiters near the gate. Silhouettes get counted. 4. If authority or their cousins show, you are ghosts. We practiced dying in the war. Now we practice not being born. A few of the widows exchanged looks at that. Humor like the gleam on a knife. Zeke ignored it, held his thumb up for the last rule. 5. You eat, you work, you breathe, you help me keep this place breathing with you. Illyra nodded as if he'd recited a hymn. We agree, she said. We will make ourselves into a small shape. Good, Zeke said. Now tell me exactly who I just made a terrible deal with. Introductions unfurled like a banner. Each name stitched in a different alphabet. Illyra, she said again. The obsidian glow under her skin steady. Shale choir of the Litheri. I kept the lists of the dead until the lists became longer than our skies. Vasht, said the antennaed one, opening the instrument case to reveal not strings, but compact sensors. Vibrolithographer. I can hear weight and distance. I can hear the way your fence lies. Surah, said the banded, scaled widow, talismans chimming. Shipwright from the brine cranes of Neth. I fix broken swimmers. Your pump is a swimmer who has forgotten water. Keth, rasped the feathered widow, crest lifting. Aerial raptor cast, orphan of the third thermals. I will hunt the pests that chew your wires. A narrow silhouette stepped forward. Face reconfiguring in soft edits. Mirai, archivist of faces. I do papers and doors. An amphibious woman with translucent skin touched the canteen at her hip almost reflexively. Leth, field medic, hydrotaxis positive. I will need humidity or I will need a grave. A pressure suit the size of a large child clicked and chimed. 1,000 glittering motes shimmered inside like a galaxy taught to behave. We are Pix, said the suit's voice. We are a many who mourn a one. A blocky, basalt-shouldered figure bowed. Gravel whispering on gravel. Anna, lith-born. I move heavy things and stand where roofs wish to fall. A slender coil of muscle and scales unspooled and recoiled with dancer's grace. Kubara, sand brood. I leave no heat and fewer footprints. A spidery widow with 8 clever limbs and a veil of silk draped like a shawl performed a precise, formal curtsy. Hesta, were mathematician. I web patterns. You have many gaps that wish to be woven. The last step from the shuttle's shadow, only when the light changed. Great, dark eyes drank the dusk. Orcs, she murmured, moth-ruled and careful. I keep watch when stars forget to. Zeke nodded as if receiving inventory. 11 names became a weight on the shelf of his mind. He didn't put his own on the scale. They moved then, brisk, efficient. Anna took the barn doors off their sulky hinges and set them back with a patience that promised no second failure. Surah crouched by the geriatric pump, talismans clinking, and whispered to it in a language of wrenches. Hicks turned the fence remote over in 100 invisible hands and handed it back without a single setting moved, but somehow it felt more obedient. Keth vanished upward into the rafters on clawed feet, soft as thoughts. Leth found the shower stall and breathed relief into the humidity like a prayer. Mirai stared at the cattle for 3 full minutes, then practiced a cow's gentle blink until it looked uncomfortably correct. Zeke did not hover. He watched, which was hovering without the calories. He'd thought the ranch was a closed system. He'd been wrong. It was a mouth, and he had fed it solitude. Now it tasted of something else. By sundown, the barn treaty Zeke's rules promoted to doctrine by repetition had evolved as second column. The widows had their own rules, voiced soft, but anchored deep. Every dawn we sing our names, Illyra said. Names are bridges. The night eats bridges if we do not rebuild them. We keep the altars of air, Leth added, showing Zeke a mesh frame hung with narrow ribbons cut from the shuttle's interior insulation. They are not gods. They are reminders the lungs must be grateful. We count, Hesta said, making quick knots in a strand of wire. Cattle, tools, footfalls on the dust. You can't hide from authority if you cannot first hide from arithmetic. And we keep a place at table for the dead, Vasht finished. Antennae dipping, because grief eats manners first. Zeke started to say he didn't have a table. then remembered the sheet of cedar that used to be the Blue Mesa sign. He'd turned history into lumber once. He could turn it back into furniture. He dragged the slab out, knocked legs together, set it under the rafters in the machine bay. When he straightened, Anna was already there, steadying a wobble he hadn't yet seen. They ate out of tins and emitters, Zeke's beans, Sura's salt-pickled kelp, Hesta's protein lozenges that tasted like the theory of bread. Illyra passed a thermos, and the liquid burned through Zeke's chest like a memory of good mistakes. The cattle sighed like stones settling in a kiln, and the big emptiness of the barn felt less like a throat and more like a chest, something that could hold breath. After the meal, they erected the altars of air along the barn's windward wall, a row of delicate frames, ribbons whispering. Each ribbon bore a glyph, etched not with ink but with pressure, as if grief could be pressed into fabric and then released to shiver. What do the marks say? Zeke asked, against his better judgment. Last vows, Illyra said. The words we were owed before the war interrupted us. We speak them, and the ribbons remember the shape of the sound. Zeke did not say that the dead rarely paid their debts. He had been both debt and debtor. He instead eyed Sura, who had the pump disassembled across the floor like a puzzle that came in a box labeled. You'll get there. You keep calling it a swimmer, he said. She grinned, toothy and kind. Water is a place. Your pump wants to go there but keeps stopping at the border. Can you fix it? Yes, she said, with the easy arrogance of a craftsman who had seen the inside of machines and found there a place. To live. But it will ask for parts you do not have. Then use parts I do. Sura's eyes slid to the Blue Mesa sign now acting as a table. Not that, Zeke said quickly. I am not sentimental, but I dislike circular irony. She laughed, happily offended, and pointed at the junk heap behind the machine bay. There is a weeping coil. Pix can marry it to the regulator with a clever lie. The pump will believe again. Pix's suit clicked, a sound like hail on tin. We will woo the pump, the many said. They were at it when Cricket chirped from the shack. That politest of alarms. Zeke's head snapped toward the sound. The barn went still as a photograph. Widows froze where they stood, 11 sculptures of intent. Zeke walked to the door at a measured pace that betrayed nothing but felt like he'd swallowed gravel. He palmed the console. The display painted the valley in lines and fuzz. A contact glowed at the edge of range high, slow, indifferent. Authority drone, surveyor, or a private eye with a budget and a boredom problem. Eyes up, Zeke said, calm grafted over panic. Heat down. Plan Coyote. What is Plan Coyote? Hesta asked. Pretend to be a rock until the danger trips over you and breaks its leg. Anna's granite lips might have smiled. She planted herself under a roof beam. Kef folded into shadow. Kubara slid under the slat of a feed bin and became drought. Leth sealed her suit's moisture vents and lay down in the shower stall, breath slow. Pix dimmed their internal drifts. Illyra moved to the altars and stilled the ribbons with a touch. Zeke watched the dot move. It meandered. It didn't ping the fence. It didn't blink onto a vector that worried his bones. It wrote lazy cursive across the sky and drifted away. He let out a breath he did not own. The ranch released its tension to beats later, like a sleeper uncoiling. You didn't say your name when we sang them, Mirai said, softly after the danger had passed. Her face chose a neutral shape, a face that could be anyone's and no one's, a rule-breaking of your own treaty. I didn't agree to your rules, Zeke said. You agreed to the part where we stay alive, Illyra said. Names help. They make us visible to those who should see us, and invisible to those who shouldn't. He should have shrugged it off. Instead he said, Zeke, and the barn felt different when it held the sound. He didn't add the rest. Harridan, Captain, once. The war had already used those syllables for other purposes. They worked until night docketed the horizon. Pix and Sura convinced the pump to remember itself. Water came up grudgingly and then with relief. Kef brought down 3 hawk-sized vermin that had been treating the roof insulation. Like edible architecture, Hesta festooned the weak points of the barn with silken math, webs that were less net. The nervous system, trembling with any touch that didn't belong. Vosh tuned the fence hum to mimic a ranch to valleys over, a sonic alibi that could stand up to a lazy scan when the dark finally dropped. Orcs slipped outside and climbed the nearest wind tower with a lover's care. She set herself beneath the blades and looked up into the abyss with professional suspicion. No bad stars tonight, she breathed when she came down. It sounded like praise and a warning both. They slept, or tried to. Zeke lay awake on his cot, the ceiling fan pretending it wind. He could feel them 11 gravities adjusting his orbit. The ranch creaked in its new language. Somewhere, a ribbon on an altar sighed. He almost missed the sound. Cricket didn't chirp. It hadn't been taught to care about ghosts. Zeke's skin noticed instead the prickle of being watched by something that wasn't a star. He rose silent, whole life practice for this exact moment, and 1,000 like it. Rifle slung, gauntlet humming a cat's purr. He slipped into the machine bay. The widows slept like sketches, half drawn in light, completed by shadow. He moved past Anna Mountain, past Left Tide Pool, past Pix Contained Galaxy, and crouched beside the shuttle. The smell was wrong. Not hot metal, not coolant, not the medicinal mint of Leth's vapor. It was the thin, electric scent of a signal held back by politeness. Zeke slid his palm persuader under the shuttle's belly and felt it something the size of a thumbnail glued where weld met weld, blinking where eyes could not. The gauntlet hummed a warning. Active tracker, low emission. Smart enough to fake dead if you scolded it. He pinched the thing free with a twist and a curse. It wriggled like a guilty fish in his hand, and then played corpse. He wrapped it in a rag and slid it inside an old feed tin, then inside another. Heard his grandmother's voice say double wrap the stink, boy, and don't bring it in the house. Vash's eyes opened. Antennae tilted. You heard it, smelled it, Zeke said, straightening. His heart knocked once in his throat, asked if they were running again soon. Bounty men? Illyra's voice, from the dark like a tide speaking. Someone with a list, Zeke said. And your name's underlined. The barn woke like a ship called to stations. Mirai flowed up into a different face. Hesta's hands counted without beads. Sura's talismans went silent. Keth's crest flattened. All hunt, no show. Pix brightened a notch inside their suit, enough to read the edge of panic. Oryx's huge eyes reflected the dimness and made it look crowded. Illyra stepped close, and in the low light Zeke could see the seam of an old wound. That ran from clavicle to heart, a crooked lightning in obsidian. We can run, she said. We have done it so long we are almost good at it. Zeke looked past her to the altars of air, to the blue mesa table that had learned to be a table again, to the repaired pump, to Anna's patient hands on a roof beam, to the cattle sleeping like boulders that dreamed. He should say, yes, run. He should open the gate and let the wind erase the shape they had made inside his silence instead. He set the double-wrapped tin on the cedar table like an offering. Or, he said, we finally make someone else do the running. Illyra's glow deepened. Not brighter but truer, like a coal remembering flame. Captain, she said without the old world's rank and with all of its weight. He didn't correct her. He tried to. The word wouldn't come. From the tin came the faintest tick. The tracker, pretending to be dead, dreaming of calling home. Zeke smiled without humor. Tomorrow, he said, we teach the fence a new language. And what do we call this one? Hesta asked, already threading wire through wire. Zeke slung the rifle across his back and rolled his shoulders as if shrugging into an old coat. Plan Widowmaker, he said, because pulp demanded it, and because it felt good to be ruthless on the side of the living, outside. The wind rose and tested the barn. Inside, the altars whispered, the trees held, and 11 widows and 1 retired human lay awake, counting heartbeats like ammunition. The tracker died at dawn. Zeke had gutted it in silence, pried the micro antenna out with surgeon's patience, then smashed it between 2 stones until it looked like a bug that had crawled into the wrong season. Still, he knew the signal had gone out at least once before he'd smothered it. Somewhere beyond the ridgelines, someone now had a heading and a suspicion. He told himself he should be angry. He wasn't. He was awake. For the first time in years. His blood felt like it had a purpose besides keeping him upright. He hated himself for liking that sensation because it was the war's old trick. Whispering in the bones, you're useful again, Captain. Patrol of the cattle widows were already at work. Keth, the feathered huntress, circled above the herd like a shadow against the red sun, warding off carrion hawks. Sura had her whole torso inside the water pump, humming to it in a key the machine seemed to understand. The pump stuttered, coughed, then sighed like a relieved swimmer. Anna carried fence posts one in each hand, setting them into the earth with geological certainty. Zeke walked among them like a man rehearsing disbelief. Every movement told him this wasn't charity anymore. The ranch was no longer his solitude. It was a camp, a fortress in embryo, and he was its unwilling foreman. "You keep saying shelter," he muttered when Elira drifted to his side. "What you mean is hiding place." "Big difference." She looked at him with those storm-lit eyes. "To the hunted, the two are the same." He opened his mouth to argue, then cricket chirped from the shack again. Visitors in the sky this time, the contact wasn't a lazy surveyor. The rangefinder painted 3 dots on approach, writing a vector to clean to be accidental. Ships. Small, but fast. Hunters. Zeke cursed under his breath. They didn't waste time. Vash's antennae quivered. Engines. Iron bleed. Sloppy tuning. Not authority. Private, which makes them hungrier, Zeke said. Authority wants order. Bounty men want paydays. The widows gathered without needing to be called. Their silence was military, sharp, efficient. The silence of those who had already buried too much noise. "What's the plan?" Sura asked, grease streaking her scaled arms. "The plan is you don't fight," Zeke snapped. "I do. You stay ghosts like we agreed." "No," Elira said simply. "We've been ghosts long enough. The dead have no teeth." Her words fell into the barn like an iron weight. The ranch prepares be midday. The hunters' ships were within sight, 3 silver gnats against the sky, orbiting lazy circles. Scanning. They'd land before evening. Zeke's ranch looked like easy prey. 1 human, a herd of docile cattle, a barn full of dust. Perfect for a raid, perfect for prisoners. Zeke set his jaw. If they wanted easy, he'd give them something else. "All right," he said, loud enough for every widow to hear. "Plan Widowmaker. Positions." Hesta, the war mathematician, spun her webs across the rafters, filaments so fine they could slice a man's fingers or snare a drone's propellers. Picks scattered into glittering motes, invisible in sunlight, waiting to become a storm inside enemy engines. Kef perched on the wind tower, talons flexing. Mirai shaped her face into Zeke's double, so from a distance there would seem to be 2 men patrolling. Anna planted herself by the gate. A basalt statue no weapon could topple quickly. Sura wired the pump to overload on command, a water explosion dressed as a landmine. Vash tuned the fence until it hummed a false heartbeat, making the ranch look deserted on scanners. Orcs crouched beneath the eaves, vast eyes watching the hunters approach as if she could already see the trajectories of their bullets, and Elira stood beside Zeke, calm as a monolith. "You led men before," she said. "Now lead us. I quit that job." "You only quit believing anyone would follow you." The breaking of silenceeth hunters landed in a plume of dust. 3 ships arranged in a crescent just outside the fence. Men spilled out, armored in mismatched plating, rifles slung with the arrogance of predators. Their leader wore a visor painted with tally marks. He strolled forward, slow, savoring. "Captain Harridan," he called, voice amplified through a speaker. "We know who you are. We know what you're hiding. 11 widows with big bounties. Hand them over, and we might let you keep your skin." Zeke stepped through the gate, rifle over his shoulder, gauntlet humming at his wrist. The widows stayed hidden, though he felt them like a pressure behind him. "You got the wrong ranch," Zeke said evenly. "Just me, my cattle, and my quiet." The visor man chuckled. "Quiet don't fetch a price. Widows do." He gestured. His men fanned out. For 1 heartbeat, the ranch held its breath. The wind paused. Even the cattle froze. Then Zeke gave the smallest nod. The ranch erupted. Kef dropped from the tower, talons tearing a man's rifle away before he knew he'd lost it. Hesta's webs snapped taut, trapping the hunters in screaming wire. Picks swarmed like angry dust into an engine intake. The ship coughed, sputtered, and belched fire. Sura triggered the pump overload, blasting a wall of water and shrapnel through another raider squad. Zeke's rifle barked once, twice precise, merciless. His gauntlet flared, hurling a man backward as if gravity itself had turned traitor. Anna waded into the melee and simply pushed one hunter into the dirt so hard the ground cracked. The silence was broken now, shattered into gunfire, screams, and the thrum of alien hymns shouted as war cries. Zeke hadn't felt alive like this in 30 years, and it terrified him. Aftermath fight ended fast. Hunters bled into dust, their ships crippled and smoking. The survivors fled, dragging their wounded, engines whining in retreat. The widows gathered around Zeke at the gate. Their clothes were torn, their eyes fierce, their breaths heavy. They looked like warriors, not refugees. "You said shelter," Zeke rasped, lowering his rifle. "Not a battlefield. Shelter must be defended," Illyra said. "Or it's only a coffin with a roof." Zeke looked at the horizon, where smoke from the hunters' retreat smeared the sky. He knew this wasn't the end. The tracker had called more than just 3 ships. The galaxy didn't forget debtors, and now he was one of them. He also knew something worse. The old captain in him had woken, and the widows weren't going to let him put it back to sleep. The smoke from the hunters' retreat hadn't even cleared when Zeke knew more would come. That was how it worked. The first pack tested the fences, and if they didn't come back wagging their tails, the bigger pack followed with sharper teeth. He stood at the ranch gate long after the others had gone back to work. The wind scoured his face, carrying the taste of metal and ash. For 30 years, he'd kept himself hidden by being small, so small the galaxy had no reason to look his way. Now, with 11 alien widows under his roof, he might as well have painted a beacon in the dirt. And yet, he didn't feel regret. The coming storm at dusk, Orcs descended from her watch on the wind tower, wings trembling. "They will come soon," she said, voice like dry leaves. "More ships." I counted the stars, and one of them blinked back. Cyril looked up from the repaired pump. "How many?" Vasht's antennae quivered, catching the low thrum of distant drives. 5, maybe 6. Heavier than before. Zeke checked his rifle, reloaded with methodical hands. "Then this is it. They'll want a clean sweep, ranch flattened, witnesses erased, prizes bagged. Authority won't ask questions if no one's left to complain." The widows stood in a half circle around him, tired, scarred, unbowed. "You can still run." Zeke told them. "Take the shuttle, slip into the canyons, scatter. They'll be looking for a herd, not ghosts." "No," Illyra said, firm. Her obsidian skin glowed faint blue in the twilight. "We ran from our homes. We ran from the war. We ran from every place we tried to rest. But not here. Not again." She looked at him, eyes steady. "You taught us that shelter is defended, or it isn't shelter at all." Zeke swallowed against the dry knot in his throat. He had meant to give them safety for one night. Somehow, he had given them resolve. Siege at Blue Mesa of Hunter's ships landed at midnight, engines howling like wolves. 6 this time, circling the ranch in a noose of fire. Spotlights slashed the dark. Voices barked orders through speakers. "By authority of the Free Bounty Compact, surrender the fugitives. Hand over the alien widows, and we'll let the rest of you live." Zeke laughed once, low and bitter. Authority, he thought. Authority always arrived dressed in someone else's uniform. He raised his rifle. "Widows," he said. "Plan Widowmaker, final act." The ranch erupted into motion. Kef launched from the barn roof. Wings spread wide, talons shredding searchlights before they could pin targets. Vasht's sensors screamed a counterhum, feeding false coordinates into the hunters' targeting systems. Picks poured themselves into the nearest engine, a galaxy of sparks that turned metal into molten slag. Sura detonated the pump she'd rigged, a geyser of boiling water and shrapnel blasting 2 men off their feet. Hesta's web patterns lit up in the dark, a lattice of razor silk slicing through raiders who blundered into the barn. Enna planted herself at the gate, immovable, hurling attackers aside like toys. Kubara slithered through the dust, striking from below, vanishing before her enemies could aim. Left patch wounds as fast as they were made, her translucent hands glowing over burns and cuts. Mirai wore Zeke's face, confusing the raiders into chasing shadows while the real man flanked them. And Orcs, high in the tower, whispered to the stars her hymns, bending drones from the sky, their circuits faltering as if ashamed. Zeke fought at the center of it all, rifle steady, gauntlet blazing gravity into weapons. He moved like the captain he once was, barking orders, covering flanks, dragging the line forward. Every time he looked over his shoulder, one of the widows was there, holding with him. Refusing to fall, the hunters broke on the ranch like waves on stone. One by one their ships lit the night with desperate, failing engines, retreating into the black. When silence finally fell, it wasn't the silence of solitude. It was the silence of survivors who had earned it. Ashes and altarst barns smelled of smoke and sweat, blood and oil. The widows gathered at the Blue Mesa table, battered but alive. On the wall, the ribbons of the air altars stirred in the breeze, whispering last vows. Zeke set down his rifle. His hands trembled not from fear, but from the sudden emptiness after violence. He looked around the table, at 11 faces lit by lantern glow. "You could have run," he said hoarsely. "Would have been easier." Elira reached across, laid her stone-cool hand over his scarred one. "We are done running. You gave us a home, even if you didn't mean to. That makes us more than widows. That makes us family." The word hit him harder than any. Battle, family, something he hadn't dared touch. Since the war stole everything it hadn't already burned. He felt the weight of command settling again. Not the crushing yoke of empire, but the rough, stubborn mantle of responsibility chosen freely. These weren't soldiers under his rank. They were companions under his roof. The cattle load outside. Come again. The ranch exhaled. The wind carried only dust this time, no threat. Zeke leaned back, letting the quiet finally seep in. It wasn't the old silence, sharp and lonely. This was a new kind, softer, fuller, stitched with 11 heartbeats. For the first time in 30 years, he didn't feel retired. He felt alive. And when dawn came red over New Canaanix, Captain Ezekiel Harridan and his 11 alien widows stepped out together into the light, ready to rebuild, to defend, and to live, however the galaxy chose to misunderstand them.